holes in there. To the right of that, there's the post capacity chart. This, I think, gets a little confusing. This is one of the things I did want to talk about today. These are all the 14 gauge charts. We never tested any of the 16 gauge posts. Those are really designed only to be used in more or less residential applications. The 16 gauge it was kind of designed to go against what you can buy at Lowe's or Home Depot. It's not really designed for industrial or commercial use. So for these, the posts, that space, the unbraced length space that you see, the max space between, the next word that's missing from that is shelves. So that's the vertical space between your shelves. And you want to take all your shelves that are in your unit and add them together. So you have 8 shelves. Each shelf can carry a capacity of 800 pounds. That's 6,400 pounds would be the weight on that post. You divide that result by 2 to achieve the loading for the intermediate or the box post, and by 4 to achieve the loading for the post located at the aisle ends. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that clearly enough. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. But I wanted to make sure I explained that unbraced length is a vertical distance between your shelves. So if you have an 87-inch tall clipper unit with 8 shelves, you'll have 14 inches vertically spaced between those shelves. So you use that 15-inch capacity there for your box post, your single angle, or your double angle. The double angle, the only way you get that capacity that's listed on that double angle is when you bolt those angle posts together in the back of the unit on every 12-inch vertical centers. Our next slide shows the flange shelves, which, like I said, these are all 18 gauge. To beef up the capacity of them, we add some extra bracing there. You can see that kind of right about here with the orange brace is shown there. 1B is, there's no real difference between 1B and class 0. Class 2B, we have 2 braces, and class 2A, we have 2 angle braces. Class 2B would be just plate braces in there. These are in the catalog, and I believe they're in the price book as well. If they're not in the price book, they're in the supplemental price book. All right, does anybody have any questions about Clipper before I move on to Rectomatic? All right, I'm going to take the silence to mean that we're moving on. A Rectomatic and Clipper are very similar in design. The Rectomatic post design is more robust than the post of Clipper. They can carry more load. The material is the same though. These are what we would prefer you use if you're going for multiple level mezzanine like the one shown in the picture. It's just that they are designed to be, the form of those posts is designed to be stronger than the form of the Clipper posts. The shelves that we use on this are actually identical to the Clipper shelves. It's just a different clip that we use to connect to the Rectomatic post. You can see how the Rectomatic post looks slightly different than the Clipper post. These have that rectangular slot in them, whereas the Clipper has that round hole and a little cross hole for the shelves to clip into. Most applications are Rectomatic beaded posts and angle posts are fine. They'll work when you get to the real heavy or real tall structures. You want to go to an H post, which is the sturdiest, I guess, light duty shelving post that we make. It's not quite as good as a pallet rack post, but it's pretty robust. In a close up of the post, you see the angle post here, a double angle or T post here. In this case, this is 2 angle posts that are all together, and then next to that is the beaded post. The one in the middle is the H post with those giant slots in the front, and the clip on the side is our shelf clip. You will get 4 of those with every shelf. It does clip right into the rectangular slots on the side of the H post and the beaded post and the angle post. It works with all the posts. Take a moment to look at the mezzanine catwalks. All All right, this is the chart for the post loading for the Erectomatic, and it's the same concept as what we do for the clipper, where you take your posts or your shelves, add up all the capacities, and divide it by either 2 for your intermediate posts or 4 for your end posts. I think this one's easier to read. It's got a little chart, shows you exactly what that post can hold at the vertical spacing again of 12 inches, 18 inches, 24 inches, 30 inches, or 36 inches. Like I said, the shelves that we use for Rectomatic are identical to the shelves that we use on the clipper. The only difference is the clips that come with it. This is one that we have to be very careful with the numbers, because the clipper posts are H1, the Rectomatic shelves are 1H. And then the rest of the post, or the rest of the shelf description, is in that post or shelf number. The 20 would be for a 20 gauge, 36 is 36 inches wide, and 12 is 12 inches deep. One difference between Erectomatic and clipper is we cannot use the conventional flange shelves with the Erectomatic clips. It will not clip into that shelf, and it will not clip into the post. So we cannot do a Erectomatic any narrower than 30 inches. We can do a 30-inch wide box shelf, but we cannot do a 24-inch wide box shelf. Does anybody have any questions on the Erectomatic? Okay, moving along then. We'll on to rivet right. Rivet right's our most basic shelving, and it doesn't require any hardware to assemble. With the clipper and Erectomatic, you're going to have nuts and bolts for the panels, for the X bracing, for some of the accessories. You'll have pins for some of the accessories. So they can be a little labor intensive to install. The rivet right it's a rivet that drops into a keyhole. There's no hardware needed. It's also available, some of it is available in some of our quick ship warehouses. So that is an option as well. With the rivet right, what you see in the picture here on the right is a double rivet. The shelf, we do not supply particle board that is available. Most likely you're going to want to get it locally. That would sit up on top of the shelf here. If you're doing just a single rivet, you still have the double rivet top and bottom for stability, but you would have a single rivet shelf support, which the particle board would kind of sit down inside of. So about an eighth of an inch of particle board that would stick up above the shelf support, the single rivet shelf support. With the double rivet shelf support, you can also use wire deck. We can quote that for you. We do not fabricate it, but we are able to get it. It's a flat wire deck. It would sit in, and the way the rivet right works is the angle posts and the T-posts are designed to hold the decking inside, so it doesn't slide around. A little bit of capacity charts for the rivet right. The posts again are the beam spacing in inches on the left side. These are all vertical spacing, the largest vertical distance between your beams. So if you have one beam space at 18 inches and one beam space at 36 inches, you would use the capacity for the angle post at 36 inches, not the 18 inches. When you're loading your posts, you always want to keep your larger vertical spaces toward the top. It's the more of the tension will be on the bottom, so you want to keep the supports and the stabilization as close as you can to the bottom. The single rivet shelf beams in the center, I think that's pretty simple. The 36-inch single rivet shelf beam will hold 350 pounds at a deflection of 1/4 inch. The 48-inch shelf beam will hold 250 pounds at a deflection of 0.34 inches. The heavy-duty beams, those are also single rivet beams. Those are just a heavier gauge material. They'll hold a little bit more. The double rivet angle beams, most of the time we recommend you use center supports. It keeps the beam from wanting to twist when you put the load on top of it. If you don't have the center support, you can hold some weight, but with the center support, you can hold somewhat more weight. Any questions on rivet right? Okay, moving on to wide span. Wide span is intended to be used for pretty much what you see in the photograph here. Mostly hand stacked items. They can be large, they can be bulky, they can be not really conducive to sitting on the small confines of a clipper shelf and a rectomatic shelf. But wide span is not very robust. It's not really meant to hold like pallets or significantly weighted materials. It is quick and easy to assemble. Like rivet right, there's little to no hardware needed for it. The shelf beams slide right into the slots on the front, very similar to pallet rack. The shelves, which is what this is here, will sit on the shelf support, which is what this is. And again, the shelf support drops into these rectangular slots on the side. You don't need any hardware, it just drops right in there. The shelf sits right on top of it. Here we have some of our different types of beams. You can see the hooks on the end of this rigidity beam here. This would be what hooks into these trapezoid slots in the front. This is the rigidity beam in the front. Similar to the rivet right, with wide span, you need a rigidity beam on the top and the bottom of every bay for stability. If you can see in this picture, the shelf itself does not sit on the rigidity beam. It sits on the shelf support here, but you do need that rigidity beam to stabilize the shelving unit. You can get wire decking to sit on the rigidity beam. There'll be a little waterfall wire in the front, will run across to the back, and then another little waterfall down the back. This is the heavy duty plywood beam. See how the plywood sits down in that little step? There's a brace to help support the plywood. This is the standard plywood beam. It's not quite as robust as the heavy duty plywood beam. That's just the capacity. From the front, they look slightly different, but neither one of them, the decking always sits down inside the step. They both have the same step. This is a wall anchor or wall tie to tie back to the wall. Keep your flue space consistent as you're installing your rack, or help you anchor it down when you get to the taller rackings. This is the shelf support over here without the shelf on it. So the capacities. The wide span frames all have a capacity of 7,500 pounds where the vertical beam spacing does not exceed 60 inches. So as long as you keep your shelves between 60 inches vertically, your frame will hold 7,500 pounds. The steel shelves, and again, it's a simple little chart. Your depth is the depth of your shelf or the depth of your frame. And then the width would be the length of your shelf or the length of your rigidity beam. They're all going to be about the same numbers. Read your chart, find your capacity. The rigidity beams, again, capacities are per pair, not per each. So if you have your 48-inch wide unit, capacity is 2,500 pounds per pair, not 5,000 per pair. One thing to note is you cannot mix your rigidity beams and your plywood beams on the same unit. They're the half-inch difference in the length. That was done because of the 8-foot piece of plywood sitting inside of your wide span frames at 96 inches. Any questions on wide span? Okay, on to the pallet rack. pallet rack is the strongest, the most robust shelving system that we have. It is throughout our warehouse in Hamilton, and I believe all of our quick ship warehouses utilize it as well. We do have different post designs, different post strengths for different uses. They go from the little 3-inch by 1.75" F post up to the T post, which is 3 by 3, and I believe it's 12 gauge material. We do also offer Pallet Rack Plus, which is designed for high seismic areas where the beam end is bigger. We have another prong in there to help stabilize the lateral forces, and the footplate on the post it's wider, and it's got 4 anchor holes in it, but we don't require 4 anchor bolts in it. We require 2. The reason there's 4 holes is because when you have a lot of floors have rebar running through them, this gives you a couple options on where to place your anchor. The same with the footplate on the standard post. There's 2 anchor holes in it. That's just so one of them is not going to hit the rebar in a concrete floor. Pallet rack being used. And the upright frame capacities. I get more calls on this than anything else here. Again, we're going with the beam spacing is vertical, not horizontal. It's not the length of your beam. And it's the worst case scenario. So the first thing you have to do is you have to find your frame type or your post type, which should be stamped on the face of your post. One of these 5 letters, F, G, P, R, or T. Once you find that, you come down to the beam spacing chart or the upright frame capacity chart. Find your letter and go across until you see the largest vertical space on your beams. So that means this one you have to measure from the floor to the top of the first beam level. And then from the top of the first beam level to the top of the second beam level, and on the way up vertically until you reach the top beam. Whatever your largest spacing is, which is usually around 54 or 60 inches on the floor, that is your capacity for that upright frame. And I hope that makes sense. The beams are a little bit easier to understand. The beams usually have a letter stamped on them. Sometimes the paint fills that letter in. And so we give you the dimensions of the face of the beam. The top of the beam is always the same. It's, I believe, 1 3/4 from the horizontal distance from here to here. It always has the same 1 5/8 inch step, except for the B beam, which is the 7/8 inch step. And these are, again, capacities per pair, not per beam. One thing to remember with these capacities is they assume the load is uniformly distributed. So we don't have a one pallet sitting in the middle of a 12-foot beam. That's going to affect the capacity of that beam. You cannot put a 10,000-pound load in the center of this 102-inch Y beam. That could cause an issue. You want to have heavier loads toward the frame, lighter loads in the center if you have multiple loads on one beam. But you want to do your best to keep the loads distributed evenly across the beams. There are accessories for the pallet rack. There's accessories for rivet right, clipper. There's a lot of other things that I did not cover today. Like I said, I wanted to go through and just give you a general overview of what we offer, what it can be used for, what it should be used for, and how to figure out the capacity that it can hold. So one last time, are there any questions on anything I've covered today?
Where are those charts available?
I'm sorry?
The charts you've shared in your slideshow, is that just on the Penco site?
All of these charts they're on the Penco site, but they're kind of hidden on the Penco site. They're in the digital catalog. If you go to the website, you kind of hover over the tools and resources, you'll get a little pop-up menu that has digital catalogs as one of the options. You click on that. All of the clipper, rivet right, wide span, and pallet rack is in the full line catalog. It's a PDF right there on the website. The Erectomatic does have its own catalog. Or if you have the printed catalog there on that as well. All right, one last call for more questions. All right, then I want to thank everybody for joining us today.
Yeah.
Hey,
I'm sorry,
I hope
Jason,
you have
go
a good
ahead.
afternoon. What was that?
Yes, thanks everyone for joining us for Penco University. If you have any more questions, feel free to send an email to general@pencoproducts.com and we'll be happy to get back with you. Have a great week.